to Nurturing Home. I'm your host, Anna Shambly, and today I'm so excited to introduce you to one of my good friends, Julie Peters. Julie and I have been friends for almost 20 years, really over 20 years, and we grew up together in the same homeschool community. Our families were always close friends, but now as adults we've become closer as we have made our own homes, gotten married, had our own babies. And she is one of my inspirations that truly encourages me to nurture my home. Julie is a pastor's wife and a mom of 3. Her and her husband raise dairy goats, chickens, grow and preserve their own food on their homestead in Iowa. Julie also has a blog that I think you would all enjoy reading. It's called petersprogress.wordpress.com. Back when Julie was living in Mississippi, we were in each other's homes almost once a week. Her home was always such a pleasant, welcoming space, and I always saw so much purposefulness in her home, in the way she prepared meals, welcomed guests, mothered her children, and kept her home. Today, I'm so excited to introduce you to her and ask her a few questions about how and why she nurtures her home. All right, well, let's jump into it. Julie, I'm so glad to have you here with me today. I have a couple of questions to ask you about your home. So why is homemaking important to your family, and why did you choose that over working outside the home?
I was very influenced by my own mother, and she was a homemaker. She stayed at home, and she homeschooled me and my siblings. And so I feel like having that model growing up,
Right.
I can remember being very young, and that was the only thing I ever wanted to do. I can remember, little kids would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I might say, oh, I want to be a nurse, or I want to be a teacher, but then I want to have kids and stay home. For me, I definitely, in my head, my plan was to have a little mini career. I always thought I would work and then have children. So I did have a little bit, like I got married, I was still in school, and I got pregnant before I even finished school. So I was able to just go right into it, and there was never any question. But yeah, I feel like that has made it different, and I feel like it's made me not really question it, but made me think about it more, because I did always think that I would have somewhat of a career outside the home. And then when I didn't choose to have the option for that. But I do think I just more and more see God's design for the family and for the home. And I know that not every family, not every mother can stay home full time. I know that there are situations out there where it doesn't work, and there's broken families and everything. But I still see God's ideal pattern for the family, being a close unit, and home being
Right.
a central place for the spreading of the gospel, for teaching. I do see that in God's design, and it is important to me when I look at my children and I see the role that I have. God has given these children to me. He's given my husband to me, and I have a responsibility for them, and it's a huge and wonderful responsibility, but I feel like I can best do that when I am at home and they are my focus.
Right.
And I'm blessed to be able to do that.
Exactly. Yes, that's how I feel too. And I've heard people say that, your home is like your first mission field. I'm sure you've probably heard that phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
just how I'm so thankful that I can be present in that, majority of the time, rather than like having to spend most of my time outside of that, and just being able to give it my top priority. And because, like you said, like our children, they're like little souls that we get to really influence and minister to and disciple while they're young and, babies and little kids in our homes. And it is such a beautiful just privilege, like you said, to be able to be present there. Let's move on to the next question. I know you kind of talked a little bit about your own mom already, but who or what were some of your biggest influences throughout your life to encourage you to prioritize your home?
Yes, so definitely my biggest influence was my own mother. Like I already said, she was and is an amazing homemaker. She was a wonderful mother. She homeschooled all of us, stayed home, and I feel like she just did a wonderful, wonderful job of having such a safe place for us. She made our home so comfortable and safe, and it was a place of love, and I just loved being home. I loved being around her. I loved, getting to cook and learn from her, and so I feel like, again, growing up, it was just natural that that's what I wanted to do, and I do think it's because she made our home so wonderful. And I honestly, as I got older, sometimes I didn't even want to leave. There might be a party or something, and I was like, I just want to stay home.
Right.
And I think it's because she made our home wonderful. And not only was she an example, since we were with her all the time, my siblings and I, we always talk about, she would give us these speeches randomly. We might be in the car, and she would just, start talking. Or we had a period where we had like a kind of more organized, like home ec curriculum. We did it for a little while, and then we realized we have home ec all day, every day.
Right, yeah.
But I remember even during those times, she would sit us down and actually talk to us about different things with keeping the home.
Mm-hmm.
And she always talked about the importance of being a homemaker, and she told us why she homeschooled us, because she wanted to be with us, and she wanted to be the one teaching us. She wanted to, be able to follow Deuteronomy 6 and teach us when she stands up and when she sits down and when she walks, and, all those things. And then, yes, also just so many of my friends growing up, seeing their homes, their mothers, that I could see and see the different things they did in their homes, and just growing up in that culture.
Right.
I feel like that was an influence.
So in my last episode, I talked a little bit about the group, club, whatever you want to call it, the Keepers of the Home group. Do you have memories of doing that?
Oh my, yes. I was actually just telling someone about it very recently, and telling her, yes, how impactful that was for me, getting to learn from different moms. And I mean, that's how I learned how to like fold a fitted sheet.
Right,
and
exactly.
How to set a table.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And some of like the recipes and things that we learned, like I still make them in my home. It's like still something that I use every day. And I think that's so sweet to be able to have like that community of moms and girls that we got to grow up in, to like see them as examples and watch them, make decisions and prioritize their home, just like we're talking about. Yep. Right. I wish that we had a good option for that for our girls right now. I guess
I know.
We need to make it happen in some way.
Right.
What are some ways that you cultivate your house or the place you live into a home for your family?
So I definitely feel like I am far from perfect. I have a lot to learn, but I do feel like recently I had a situation that kind of, I guess, made this more real to me. We, as you know, we moved to a new home in January of this year, and I feel like once we moved here, we had boxes everywhere, furniture everywhere. It was freezing cold because we moved from the south to the north in January. And it was a lot of chaos. And I remember after a couple of days of just crazy, just trying to figure out where to put this box and get beds set up and things like that, it kind of hit me that I wanted to make this house a home. I was mostly thinking about our children, but really our whole family. I wanted us all to be comfortable and not, I didn't want us to just be living in this state of chaos. So I I feel like I prioritized, I wanted to get the girls' room all set up so they had a place to sleep, and I unpacked all their toys so they had these like familiar things. I unpacked most of our kitchen, and I went to the grocery store so I could be cooking like our regular meals. And
yeah,
I just remember telling my husband, Sam, that after those first couple of days, I was like, okay, I'm ready to just get into a routine, and the rest of the house is going to have to just come together as I'm able to. You know, maybe every afternoon I work on it for a couple hours. So I think, you know, at that time I was trying to focus on relationships. I felt bad. I didn't want to just constantly be pushing my kids off and trying to unpack boxes. I unpacked their toys and their books, and we were trying to read together. You know, I was trying to focus on relationships more than the physical space. I also think cultivating home for us happens a lot around the table. We have our favorite meals that are, you know, kind of our family meals, and a couple of my daughters love to cook with me, and I feel like that was important. The whole day might be chaos trying to do whatever, but we sat down at the table and had a meal. Some nights it might have just been a peanut butter and jelly or something, but we'd all sit down together.
Right. That's so great.
So yeah, I feel like the main focus is focusing on relationships over the actual physical space, but also doing things with the physical space to cultivate relationships. I remember reading Sally Clarkson. I was reading one of her books, The Life-Giving Home, and it was right after I got married. And she talked about how she arranged her home, like she arranged her couch and her chairs and different things, like to encourage conversation and relationships. And that's always stuck with me. So I do always try to arrange certain things in our home. You know, I put my kids' toys in a place where I can be in the kitchen and I can still interact with them, or we have our living room set up where we can all be in there comfortably.
Right. I love that.
I have baskets of books everywhere, so my kids are always wanting me to read books and different things like that.
Audrey is at that age right now. My youngest, she is just wanting to read constantly, and so I have like our library basket like in the living room, and it's just pretty much always scattered across the floor because she wants to just pick up a book and read all the time. It's so sweet. What you were saying about cultivating the home like that reminds me of one of the moms that we grew up around who was in Keepers. I remember her saying one time when another mom was like, she was just kind of like talking about how, you know, chaotic the home can be and how hard it is to sometimes keep a clean home. And she just said, remember that this is your children's home too. So don't be so focused on, you know, having everything spotless all the time that you don't let them live in their home. And I have like kind of kept that in the back of my mind, you know, as a mom, not saying that I don't stress about messes, but that just like you said, like, are there spaces in my home where they can, you know, sit and read or play, or am I like constantly, you know, saying like no toys in here or whatever, you know, like allowing them to have spaces where they can play and they are involved, and I'm like bringing them alongside me as we're doing things, just like you said with like, you know, letting them help cook. And I think for a lot of people, they view things, you know, like chores, like household chores, like laundry and dishes, and I mean, even like, you know, outdoor care and cooking is like this, like things that maybe just mom does or maybe just dad does, but it really can be a family thing that we can like bring them alongside us. And that's where we teach them, you know, the value and the message and the meaning behind why we do what we do.
And I also, again, I'm far from perfect and I'm working on this, but I also just try to remember that a lot of times my attitude really can set the tone for our home, and I'm constantly having to work on, you know, messes do stress me out. When we first moved, all the boxes, it was so stressful, but I had to try to overcome that. And I didn't want my kids were in a new place too. I didn't want them to be all stressed by the boxes. And my husband too, he's affected by my attitude. So even in the day-to-day, now we're all completely unpacked, but I don't want to be so stressed by all the messes, to be like, oh no, okay, they just dumped out the box, and what am I going to do? There are limits, obviously. I'm not going to let them destroy the whole house. But yeah, just remembering that my attitude really can set the tone for the family, and trying to be peaceful and loving and welcome them. I don't want to be washing dishes and one come ask me a question and be like, no, I'm washing dishes right now,
Right. Yeah.
Again, just kind of focusing on relationships is, I think, the biggest thing.
So kind of on that subject, how does your lifestyle of, growing food, preserving food, raising dairy goats and chickens, how do you feel like that benefits your family and helps you prioritize your home?
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting when you sent that question, and initially I was like, oh, I don't know. That's just what Sam does. I do think it is more of his thing.
But you're like processing the dairy, even if you're not out there
right.
tending the goats.
No, you're right. I guess it was initially his idea, and he does do most of the animal care and everything. So for our family, I definitely don't think our lifestyle is for everyone. I don't think we are better homemakers for doing it, but it is something that we enjoy. Sam has been very interested in, he calls it like the simple life or the primitive life, just kind of getting back to basics. I guess getting closer to different sources. And it does make sense because it's what we are trying to do in our home. We are all saying home. We're not sending our kids off to be taught by someone else. We are wanting to keep them here, to teach them, keep them close to us. So I think that is one thing that kind of just fits in with that. We're trying to be close to our source of food. We like knowing, what goes into our dairy and our eggs and our vegetables.
Right.
It is also just a hobby, though. We enjoy it. Sam does most of the animals. I do most of the gardening. It is just a hobby of mine. It makes me very happy to get out there and have my hands dirty in the dirt. But another benefit is I do think it's a good thing for our family to all do together. I know different families have different ways that they connect, and this is just for our family. But this spring, we were all outside. We were kind of like tilling our garden. I don't know. We had these potato forks, and we were overturning it, and I had Jean strapped on my back, my youngest, and then our other two daughters were just running around on the dirt, and they love to go barefoot in the dirt. And it felt, it was something bringing us together. And I hope as the kids get older, right now they love it. They like to go out there and try to milk a goat. They love to gather our eggs. And I hope as they get older, it continues to be something that we kind of connect over. And then it just keeps going. Right. Maybe we make some soup with all the produce from our garden, and they're so excited and be like, oh, look, this is the squash I picked, and these are the tomatoes we canned. And
right.
So, yeah.
I feel that too. I mean, our life, we don't have goats, and I don't extensively garden. My mom and dad live right next to us, so they have a garden that we kind of share. And honestly, most of the time I go and pick the produce. I don't do much else. So it is very pleasant for me. I do like when they're like setting up the garden and stuff. Sometimes we're, involved in like some planting and things like that, but my dad's the one who's like doing the daily maintenance. But it is so sweet to like see my kids excited to eat a tomato. And I think normally in a situation, if I was just to like put a tomato on their plate, they're very disassociated from the tomato. There's no way that that tomato is getting eaten. But if we like go and like we plant the tomato and we grow the tomato and we pick the tomato and maybe we like, make a sauce with the tomato. That's something that my kids have been doing lately with my brother Ben, is that he'll like take them out to the woods because he's a botanist, he's a biologist, so he like knows every, like, you can just point to any plant and he knows what it is. So they'll gather some like edible plants. They go foraging and then he'll come back and they'll like make a little salad or like a little stew or something with it, and they love it so much. And he's teaching them like the names of things and what they're used for, and they're so excited about it. And I love that. I love teaching our kids the beauty of going slow and like the process of how things are made, because that can be so lost, and you just don't understand the value, or you don't get to experience it or appreciate it in the same way. So that's a sweet thing that we get to show them.
It's a good way for us, like you said, it's a way that we can teach them. And I know, especially with growing the garden, but also when we've like hatched little chicks or when we've had baby goats, it is a way to teach them about creation and then about the one who created it all.
Exactly.
I know a lot of times, when we plant our seeds and we'll go out there and see them, we'll be like, look, God made this grow and this is amazing. And we can see God's design for the world, and just this little bit that we get to, I guess, experience that on our own in our home.
Right.
It is amazing, and it's a nice way to be able to teach them too.
Right. And I think that just that worldview and that like lens to like view the world, that this, like, God made this, this has value because God, placed it here, is such an important thing to like teach your children. And having them, in your home, then you're with them constantly, to be able to really instill that mindset has so much value, for the rest of their life.
Right.
And I, like you said, I do think that watching the life cycle of plants and animals is a great place to start, or maybe not start, but to continue doing that.
Right.
So what do you think prevents moms and families from choosing homemaking as their main job?
I have thought about this question a lot, and I don't want to speak for all, for everyone else out there. I can speak to things that I know I have struggled with when I have maybe questioned my decision to be a homemaker. And when I can see from like a surface level, again, I'm not saying this is what everyone is thinking, but I feel like two of the biggest reasons are financial. And then I also think it has to do with fulfillment. And again, those are things that I struggle with too. And I hear people talk about, we just can't live on one income. We just can't do that.
Right.
And I do think that there are some situations for sure that is true. I think there are probably some situations that the can't maybe just means won't. Maybe certain families, they really value being able to go on vacations and buy new cars, or, whatever.
Right.
Whatever the thing may be. I do think there probably are some situations that a budget could be made, and it could be possible if that was what was really valued and desired. And I struggle with that too. Sometimes I do think, wouldn't it be nice if I could bring in a little bit of income and maybe we could do this or we could do that. Thankfully, my husband is very supportive, and anytime I say it, he's just like, no, what you're doing is important and we don't need any extra income, and we'll, make whatever work.
Right.
But another thing that I know I struggle with, and I think other people do too, is the fact that on just the day-to-day, on the surface level, homemaking may not feel very fulfilling. You don't have someone handing you a paycheck for the job that you've done. You don't normally have people even, checking your work and saying, good job.
It's very invisible sometimes.
Yes, yeah. So I say surface level because I do think that homemaking and raising children and creating a home is ultimately very, very fulfilling. But yeah, the day to day, I mean, sometimes I do say all I do is laundry and cook food like every day, and it never ends because people keep wearing clothes and they keep wanting food.
Right.
And my children are young right now, and I know that they appreciate it, but they don't usually, they're not saying thank you for folding my laundry or thank you for cooking my food.
Right.
It's just expected. My mother said homemaking can feel like a thankless work, and just because it is hard doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. And just because no one tells you thank you, it also doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It probably means you're doing it right. If you didn't cook any food, then people would probably say, oh, like, I'm hungry, where's my food? But if you are always providing meals and providing laundry and clean spaces, that means you're doing it right. And so you just need to...
Right, you're filling the need. Yeah.
Right. So, and it's good for me to remind myself that too, that my family really does appreciate it, and it's okay that they don't pat me on the back every single time I do a little task,
Right.
There's an older lady at the church where I attend, and she has 6 children, and all of her children have children, so she has a bunch of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and I think she told me the last number was 70.
Wow.
The grandchildren and the great-grandchildren.
Oh my goodness.
So I want to be just like her when I grow up. But she said, it is wonderful right now, and it is fulfilling right now, but just wait. When your children grow up and you start having grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and right now all of her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren are faithful Christians. And she said, it is so fulfilling to be able to see that. And you can, of course it's all God, but God working through you, you can see the fruits of what you have done. And that's just also encouraging to think about and amazing.
That's so sweet.
And she said now looking back, she would have had 6 more.
Wow.
If she could have.
Oh, that's so opposite, I feel like, of what you hear a lot of people say. They're like, oh, you're enjoying this stage, or, you're enjoying this stage. Oh, just wait till this happens. It's horrible,
Right.
And I think that kind of goes along with some of the things that I've heard about, heard people say reasons why they don't want to, stay home or prioritize homemaking, is because there's this, there's this cultural dialogue of, kids are horrible, and I couldn't imagine wanting to be with my kids all day. And I just think that we interpret, homemakers and stay-at-home moms and some parent-child relationships just as very negative thing, instead of, a discipleship and the way that God has illustrated his love for us, in the way that he is a father for us and is patient and is graceful and kind. And so I think that because our culture doesn't have that, biblical gospel lens when we look at kids and we look at the family unit, that's part of the reason that we have, kind of changed, and we have some misconceptions, I suppose, about what that looks like. And like you said, I think that a financial aspect, we also live in a world where the norm, especially us in America, the norm is for the mother and the father both to have a career, and they have those, 2 incomes. And one thing for me that I've heard a lot from my in-laws is Anita would always say, sometimes we were a 2-income family, sometimes we were a 3-income family because, Jeff had multiple jobs. Mm-hmm. So that was something that I remember hearing. It's you can still be a 2-income family even if you only the dad works outside the home. Of course, there are options, like you said earlier, there are options for working, in the home, outside within the home. rather than
Right.
like leaving the home. And so like the financial aspect, there really are people, who can't make it work, or they have a lot of debt, and there's various issues. There's so many variables with why this can't happen like right now in your life. But I do think that for so many, that's something that you can work towards, that you can, if there's something that you feel that the Lord is leading you to and that you have a desire for, that there are steps that you can make to get to that point where you can. So not just abandoning it just because you can't make it work right now, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
But
and then I also think it's important if someone was in this situation where financially or for whatever reason they couldn't, I don't think that they just have to be, don't just write it off and don't just think, oh, I'm not a homemaker. I know in so many different books I read and different people I hear from, if you live in a home, even if you don't have a husband and children, but if you have a husband and a children, you can be a homemaker. I think you can still fulfill God's role for you, whatever, if it's wife or mother or whatever. I do think it can be a mindset. I think it can be easier if you are, blessed with the ability to stay home full time.
Right.
But yeah, I also wouldn't want it to be like, oh, I can't stay home full time, I'm just not a homemaker. Because I think you can still work on cultivating relationships and setting up your home in such a way, and you can still teach your children and love your husband and do all the things.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, no matter what situation you find yourself in.
And on that note, just that I guess you are a homemaker, whether or not you're intentionally doing it, to like look around and see what type of home that you've made, and if is it the type of home that you want it to be.
Right.
Which is kind of the whole point of my podcast, is I want to encourage people to nurture their home and to nurture the sense of home in their families and in their own hearts, because home is so much more than just a place. It is a feeling, and it is a mindset, and it is a goal, and for me it is a intentional closeness that I foster with the Lord, and looking for all of the ways that He provides for me and nourishes me and makes me feel safe. I feel like the Lord is my home in so many ways. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Nurturing Home. I hope you'll check us out on Instagram at nurturing_home_ on YouTube. My channel is called Nurturing Home. And on anywhere you would get your podcast, like Apple Podcast and Spotify, the Nurturing Home Podcast.